Abstract Expressionism, one of the most revolutionary and progressive art movements in history. But what really makes it so special? And what makes it stand out from previous movements? Today we've put together a small crash course on everything you need to know about Abstract Expressionism and the artists that contributed to the movement. To really understand Abstract Expressionism, we have to go back to what sparked the beginning of the movement. It all began with the ending of World War II. Thousands of troops were returning home from having experienced one of, if not the most, gruesome wars in history. This led to many psychological issues that affected the entire country. There was an overall sense of post-war anxiety and trauma felt nationwide. And that, my friends, is exactly where Abstract Expressionism found its home. One very important aspect of the Abstract Expressionist movement is its city of origin. It started in none other than our very own New York City. This fact alone made the movement incredibly unique for its time, because it pulled the forefront of new art from the previous leader, European country, Paris, France. Taking this title from Europe made the movement very influential and different from other styles. Not only was just a new style of art created, but one that was entirely and emphatically American in spirit. Abstract Expressionism started in the early 30s and ended in the mid-50s, but it is most recognized for its peak time from the 1940s to the 1950s, and more specifically, the beginning of the 1950s. The biggest and most revolutionary part of Abstract Expressionism is the fact that the artists focus mainly on the process rather than the end result. The end result was still important, but for the most part, the artists really wanted to display how the piece of art was made. By showing the process, the artist portrays many different traits and themes within the painting. Aesthetically, when you look at an abstract expressionist painting, there are many things that sets it apart from other movements. One of these being color. Being abstract in spirit, abstract expressionism art relies a lot on non-representational aspects. Color can portray emotions or feelings. Examples of this would be using bright colors to portray happiness, cool colors to portray sadness, or warm colors to portray anger. Another very important trait of abstract expressionism is the way that the artist puts down the paint in a very messy or unorthodox way. This allows for a lot of spontaneity and differences in colors and hues. Another important aspect of abstract expressionism is the fact that the artist made a lot of movement in the painting and made it look very energetic. When abstract expressionism first came into mainstream, a lot of critics had issues with the art that was being presented. There was many questions of whether it was actually art or whether it should be considered art because it didn't have the detail or the amount of time or effort that seemed to be put into works in previous movements. It took time for the critics to start accepting it as work, but at first it was definitely received negatively. Unlike earlier art movements such as the Byzantine or the Renaissance, abstract expressionism lacked representational items. Instead of portraits and still lifes, the art used lines, colors, and shape. This made it both timeless and powerful because it didn't have any representational icons or symbols that would cause the viewer to associate it with a time, place, or person. Instead, it would cause the viewer to come up with his own associations and in turn would cause the viewer to create his own emotion towards the piece. There were two very influential artists that contributed to the abstract expressionist movement. One of them being Willem de Kooning. Willem was born in 1904 and died in 1997. He was part of a group of artists that came to be known as the New York School. They were the group that actually headed the abstract expressionist movement. This group included artists such as Jackson Pollock, Elaine de Kooning, his wife, Lee Krasner, Franz Klein, and many more. Willem de Kooning specialized in painting portraits of women in an abstract way. He would use colors, lines, and shapes to give the outline of a woman without actually giving her definitive features.